You're listening to My Inner Teacher with Peter Sterios and Krystal Ariel. The answers you seek are within you.
Welcome, MC. It's an honor to actually connect with you because I know how busy you are, and I appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming onto this platform of My Inner Teacher, which is really a community that's building around people who have taken a path that's kind of gone away from mainstream, that they've learned maybe how to live successfully or unsuccessfully in the matrix and have decided, no, I'm kind of gonna just follow this inner guidance system. So I'm curious about your story from the beginning, like literally, if you want to start when you were 8 years old or whatever. What directed your curiosity towards your own?
I would say pain and suffering, like the rest of us,
Yeah.
and then searching for a cure, searching for a remedy, trying many different things to ease the pain, drugs and alcohol. But the things that really became the most therapeutic for me were music. Music is my therapy. And of course, when I fell into yoga practice when I was about 17 years old, thanks to my dad, he was my first teacher. And that he led me to his teacher, who was living in San Francisco at the time. I was born in San Francisco. And his teacher's name was Larry Schultz, who used to teach a form of Ashtanga yoga called the Rocket.
I know him well.
Yeah. And
No,
so Larry
knew him well.
Yeah, he took me under his wing, and I lived with him. He was like my uncle, my mentor. And then he took me to his teacher, whose name was Dorothy Divac, and she was studied Course in Miracles. And then I went to India to study with Larry's Ashtanga guru, Patabi Joyce. And then that led me on a whole pilgrimage of studying with a lot of different teachers and traditions, and but really always searching for the cure, always searching for what would bring some relief, some peace, some steadiness, some ease, some stability, some calm, so I could cultivate a little more kindness, confidence in spirit. Had to make a lot of mistakes, fall, get lost. And it's just trial and error until you kind of give up and surrender. And I think ultimately everything is like a dominoes. Everything kind of leads you to that place where you just can let go of everything and just be open, and then the healing really starts to happen more rapidly. So I'm just in that process. I'm always in the process of inquiry, asking this question, like, am I doing this right? Am I doing this wrong? Am I following spirit? Am I following my mind? And it's like navigating through a jungle, through a field. And I think you had talked about leaving the matrix, and what I found is that the matrix is only in our mind.
Right.
So being able to see my mind, not judge my mind, try to gain more understanding, insight, and a depth of compassion for my mind. I'm just grateful for the teachers and for the music and for the practices, because it's really, helped me get here. So I'm still alive. I'm still able to practice.
Yeah, the mind is both the enemy and the gift,
Yeah.
If you're lucky, if it's your karma, you find the teachers that guide you to see that polarity, to see that understanding. And, the practice of yoga is one that for me has been life-changing. I just have to look at my family, especially my siblings that are just it's so different, and it's fine. They're living their true life, but for me it's hard even at family gatherings to really have much of a conversation with them, because I have to really be creative about what topics are acceptable to talk about in family gatherings.
So we communicate on many levels. There's the top level of like the mind, current events, everything that's happening in the outer world. We can clash on that level, but we can also communicate on the level of spirit. Right. So we can be with them. We can be with everyone. We can be with ourselves, and we don't have to agree. It's it's a rare occurrence if we can all find consensus.
Right.
That's like a miraculous moment when there's that unity in the outer world, but it's much easier to find that consensus within ourselves, that unity, when we decide that we don't want to contribute to more suffering. And I think we get to that place, for me, is like having felt the suffering and then realizing, what can I do to minimize it?
Yeah.
So yeah, I totally empathize and understand what you're saying. That's what I've been learning as well, just how to communicate in spirit and like be in that loving, kind place, regardless of what's going on the surface.
Speaking of suffering, I'd love to know if you're open to share, like, what was the pain and suffering that you were looking to find a cure for?
It's the human condition. You may have heard of it.
And you found the cure. That's impressive.
Well, I've tasted the cure. I still have to take a regular dosage.
Reality.
Which of the human conditions, though? Because I feel like there are many.
Being separate from spirit, being lost in your mind. I think Peter really hit the nail on the head, and it echoes what Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita, is that in this life, we only have one enemy. We only have one adversary. And it's not an external person. It's our own disconnected mind. And the greatest ally, the greatest friend, the greatest teacher, the greatest advocate, the greatest support comes when we're able to realign the mind with spirit and make the mind into a servant. And then the mind becomes like a great support system. The mind starts to become filled with prayer, gratitude, mantra, reflection, contemplation, inquiry. So the mind starts to get trained into the yoga of being reabsorbed back into the self. But until that happens, the mind creates the impression that everyone and everything is against us, because the mind is against us. So then we try to buffer that pain, and we try to solve by treating the symptoms. I try to alleviate the pain, whether it's through substances or, all kinds of things to escape. But it's really without getting lost in the details, because it's really the same condition for all of us. We all suffer from the same poison of thinking that we're separate. And so the nectar, the medicine, the honey, the healing is being able to be still, calm down, slow down your breath, soften, open the crown, relax the heart, be grounded, come back into the moment, back into awareness. Awareness is the remedy. So, yeah.
Where did music show up in your life?
I'm so grateful to music. Music was there from my mother's heartbeat forward. So they say the first song we hear is the sound of the pulse of our mother's heart. So from that we experienced the rhythm of life, the pulse of being fed, nourished, supported. And then I think we long for that connection, that sound, that healing, that feeling of love and support. And I think when we get that rhythm, whether it's in our practice, whether it's listening to music, or whether like we're a writer or photographer, whatever it is, when we hit that stride, we're in our rhythm, like we've got the flow, we're in the flow state. And then all the suffering is relieved, because we're not clouded and all that, the culmination of all the stuff doesn't cover us. And we break out of the clouds and we can feel the sunshine again, because we're just in the moment doing our thing. So that's the music is that for me.
Was there a particular type of music? Let's say as you're growing up, was there music that you were drawn to, or was it just all music, like opera?
Anything with a beat. Yeah, anything with a beat. Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic.
And where does graffiti come in to all of this? The graffiti came first.
Well, the music came first, and then I started. Well, actually, that's a good point, Krystal. Like, the music was always there. The soundtrack is always there. But when I was young, I used to doodle and scribble, and I was always drawing cartoons. I was a very quiet, introverted kid, and I was always in the corner drawing. I always imagined that I'd be a cartoonist or a comic book illustrator when I got older. But as I went into yoga, the music just became such a compelling way to share images, because music is a way of painting as well. But I found that with music I can paint with more feelings, maybe it could be a little more abstract. Like it's just a way to communicate more energy. Whereas like when I was drawing, it would take so long for me to tell a story with art. Um, but with a song, I could tell a story in just like a couple minutes.
Man, I relate to that so much because the other side of me is an architect. And,
Nice.
speaking through the language of architecture takes years.
Yeah.
I've worked on a project, a large project that took about 2 years to
Wow.
complete the drawings, and then
Wow.
another year to have it built, and
Wow.
then 3 years to get that song out, man. That's really patient.
I have some songs like that too, actually.
No, it's really interesting how art and creativity. I teach this that there's so many aspects of architecture about creating spaces that
Oh,
are inspiring, that are exactly the same in yoga,
that's
and
beautiful.
even the vocabularies overlap and kind of cross. And I feel blessed in a way that I'm kind of schizophrenic in that way. Like
Mm.
I've had so many careers in this life, and still do to this day. And people ask me, like, well, what do you do? And I go, well, where do I start? Like, I
Well,
do a little of this.
if I had to put one word, not I don't like to label or categorize, but the word that stands out is designer.
Hmm.
I feel like you're a designer.
Yeah.
Like, 'cause even I look at the pattern of your shirt and like I see like I think you appreciate really beautiful design
Yeah.
and elegant design. And I'm sure you've seen that in yoga with the postures and in the spiritual practice and just in nature, the sacred geometry that's expressing itself through everything is just it's amazing.
It is
So
amazing.
amazing.
It is amazing.
I'm gonna ask you both a question, or just like put something out there so we can talk about it. Because you were saying, Peter, that it took you 2 years to draw something out, and then another year to build it. But didn't it take them like 300 years to build the Sistine Chapel? Like,
Oh, I know. And I just was in India, and the Taj Mahal, like you walk around that building and you realize that it took, you know, hundreds of years, I think, to actually get it done.
yeah,
And that to me is like Gaudi. There's another building in Spain, Gaudi's, it's still being built, and it's
Mm,
still in process. I love that this creativity is so strong that it can kind of carry over generations and
yeah.
inspire people. I like I said, I feel lucky in a way that my path has included these two, the major aspects of my creativity are these two forms, yoga and architecture.
Mhm.
And the next form that kind of showed up was writing, and
Nice.
and then the book happened against all odds to
Mm,
create this book, Gravity and Grace, that gave me an opportunity to look at my life with a microscope almost, and really feel into some of these things that I had then to document and kind of put in words. I don't I don't even know, MC. Have you written a book or writing books or?
Yeah, I wrote a book a couple years back. It was called Spiritual Graffiti, and just like the beginning of my journey. And I know what you mean when you say against all odds. I wrote the book, I think it took about 6 months, and but I was touring heavily. I was doing like 30 cities, and I was traveling. I was on a plane. I literally had no time, and I think it happened because I didn't have time.
Right,
It just happened, and I got amazing advice along the way. Um, in the beginning of the process, it said, "Do not edit anything."
right.
And that was so helpful because
Same.
the way my mind is like I want to fine tune and tinker and shave and carve and craft, and just that wise counsel is like, don't edit, just dump, just pour, just spill, just get all the contents out, and then you'll have a big pile of clay, and then you can edit it once you have all that stuff to work with, and that really helped me. Um,
I
and the
had the
book,
same.
yeah, yeah,
I had the same story. I turned in a manuscript, 125,000 words for a
mm,
75,000 word contract, And I hadn't used an editor. I took that same advice, dumped it all into a manuscript. And then the publisher said, well, actually, great, thank you. It took me 3 years. Great, thank you. But, okay, we're going to hire an outside editor to help you chisel back 50,000 words. And, that process for me was initially painful. But in hindsight and through the process of getting to know this editor, it was a spiritual journey in and of itself, like really looking at the choices that we make and how we communicate. And frankly, that editor, I never met her. We just communicated by email. And I don't think we ever used Zoom or any of the kind of digital format so it was just email or phone call. And her skill at editing took a book that was a little rambling, a little bit, heavy on the anecdotal story, and really pruned these kinds of branches that needed pruning, and then brought it into something that, 6 months after it launched, it won a literary award. And I can't really take credit. I mean, a little bit I'm taking credit, but I think the literary award was a function of this editor. And
I believe it. Because I feel like that if we're open, God is editing all of us.
Right.
That's beautiful. Okay, but wait, I didn't get my question answered, so I'm going to bring it back so that we can get into. So the thing I said about 300 years in the Sistine Chapel, I wanted to relate it back to the need for patience, or just, because often people see when someone finally touches that magical place in their life, or they have arrived, or whatever term you want to use, like things seem to take off for them. And on the outside, it seems like it just happens, like that person just got lucky. But I want to talk about, or I want to know, and maybe Nick, you can start, just like, did you go through periods when you felt like, my God, this is taking forever? When am I going to find it? When am I going to know that I'm on the right path? Like, how do I know when I found it? And what was your process to ease that anxiety? Or did you ever have that anxiety? Hey, quick note. Peter's Inner Teacher Academy is launching soon. If this is resonating with you, head over to innerteacheracademy.com and grab a spot on the wait list. These trainings are intimate and space is limited. So if you want to be first in line, tap the link in the description below and sign up.
You can also see details about my 2025 retreats at some incredible locations around the world, like Iceland, Austria, California, and New Zealand. Attendance at these trainings will count towards in-person hours for the Inner Teacher Academy. And now let's get back to the magic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's times when nothing I could do would succeed ever. And then there's times that no matter what I did, it would succeed automatically. So it's mysterious, and you could chalk some of this up to astrological, if you believe in that system. There's also the hand of grace. There's also where we come from and where we're going, and who's walking with us, and what our destiny is. And there's also a level of, and I've been shown so much in this journey, there's also the level of, would you be doing this regardless if it was successful or not?
I have to use that often because for the last 5 years, and pretty much the pandemic years up till now, it's been, would I be doing what I'm doing if it wasn't successful? And the answer is yes, because the last 5 years have shown me that I have this, what do you call it? Karma is, there's an aspect of my journey that deep within myself, I feel it's my role to share, whether there's one person or there's, like at Sedona this last weekend, hundreds of people showing up to listen. And I want to share a little quick story.
Please.
I've shared it on this. Is my primary 20-year relationship with a yoga teacher was this man named Shandor. I don't know if you've ever met him. And when he was, starting to, he'd grown up with yoga. His father was a yogi. Was an engineer who traveled from Hungary to India for engineering projects and learned yoga there. Came home, taught his son. His son took it into way beyond, like where his father was. He became this kind of surrogate son for BKS Iyengar, and especially after Iyengar's son was in a rickshaw accident where Shandor would be spending, long periods of time in India traveling with Iyengar as he taught around India, and Shandor would be giving these demonstrations. So this opportunity, he meets Chuck and Mati at Yoga Works in
Nice.
LA in India.
Yeah.
And Chuck and Mati go, God, you what you're teaching, you've got it. Do you know this story? Have you heard this
No,
story?
no,
So,
I'm friends with Chuck and Mati, and I was good friends with Mati, and I love Chuck.
yeah. So anyway, so they said come to LA, teach at Yoga Works. In those days, it was just two studios, Montana Avenue and Main Street. Come, we'll make it worth your while to come. He shows up in LA for the first time, and as he tells his story, 1.5 students showed up. There's a full-bodied person and a paraplegic person,
Wow.
So it was like, oh my God, he came all this, and his mind was busy with how are we going to pay the airfare? I've got a family children at home but he showed up fully present. He taught to those 1.5 students. And the next year he came back and there was like 70 students. And
Wow.
and it was just through who those two people were, and Chuck and Mati had this now developed a relationship with him and understood how he presented and how he taught. And that story has stayed with me for my whole life. Like the early days of Manduka, I was just selling mats out of the trunk of my car at Yoga Journal conferences, or selling them out of my garage here in San Luis Obispo, and not really thinking about a business. I was thinking about just sharing this gift of an amazing product with the people that were fortunate enough to come across me, and then all the testimonials started coming in. And so that I totally agree with you, like you just do it until it either has momentum that carries on, or it's just a select few that get this gift of presence in a way.
Well, I have a similar story from, just a couple people showing up in my class, one being my dad, and just being very, very slow for a very, very long time. And then, just growing as a teacher, growing as an artist, as a musician, and just gradually, but inevitably, as Krishna Das says, like if you're on your path, it expands, expands, expands. Everything starts from a tiny seed. There's nothing in nature that starts big.
Right. Yeah.
But it sounds like you have to do the work, like you can't manifest your way to something. I mean, sure, mindset helps and stuff like that, but you need to, like Peter, you were showing up selling those mats out of your car, out of your garage.
Yeah.
And Shandor, I mean, something I learned recently was like you can't be too embarrassed or too ashamed, or you can't think that you're like, oh, I'm bigger than this, I'm better than this, I deserve more than this. And there's part of that that's true, but then there's this other part that's like, okay, but don't avoid the work that needs to be done in order for you to get to where you say you want to go. It's like you don't know who that one person or 1.5 person could be that shows up that could completely change your life.
Exactly. That's happened so many times in my life. Even this word coincidence, we've talked a little bit about this before, but there's just something about this word that
Coincide.
Yeah, coincide. Two things
Go,
that
if you want things to coincide, go inside.
love that. Is that in one of your songs?
No, I mean, that's
It
just
should be. That's good. I like that.
so when things collide and coalesce, when things come together, that's how babies are born. So when certain elements mix together, that's how food is made. When certain energies mix, that's where music comes from. Like art is about, I heard this thing was beautiful the other day. Like art is about assembling. It's about gathering and collecting. And what I always recommend to like young artists is look at the things that you really love, the things that light you up, and then have fun with it, like play with it, see how you can put them together, see how you can mix it together, and you'll find your authentic voice in that way. because for me, music was always my joy. Visual art, graphic art is my joy. You know, connecting to spirit, spirituality, yoga, meditation that's my lifeline. So I just naturally gravitate. You know, your book is Gravity and Grace. Like anything that gravitates you toward grace, which is something that happens effortlessly.
Right.
And that's a sign of your duty, your destiny, your dharma. It's what you're supposed to do. That's why God put that in your heart. God put it into your heart to give you that service, that offering. And yes, there's some difficult things along the way, but I think in general, the person who makes it difficult, in my experience, was me. Every time I got tripped up in my head about I need this or that or da 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 da, I always had everything I needed if I stopped and would just allow myself to get still, and then I'd become more resourceful. Because when I go back to the resource, I'm resourcing that resource within myself, then I start to see that everything around me is everything I need. But if I'm in my head, which is disconnected, then I convince myself that I'm not good enough. I don't have what I need. It's not right. It's never going to be right. And then before I even break through the firewall past the guardian at the gate, I get locked outside of my own heaven, my own internal realm of, because all creativity flows from creator. Like we're actually not doing any of it. It's the idea that we're doing it creates the suffering. When we let go and relinquish and abandon that and dissolve that idea that, like when you're making music, Krystal, it's like I'm sure you've had the experience where it's just happening,
Yeah.
you know?
It
It's
feels
just happening.
amazing.
It's like heaven.
It's the same with architecture. You know, like the architecture is a very unique art form in a way, because you have a client who's paying you to create a space that they end up dwelling in, and they have let's call it, they have certain limitations. What are they? Time and money, and so they have a finite amount of time before the baby comes or whatever it is
Right.
that they're trying to build for, and then there's this money thing. And so as this kind of facilitator of their dream, I have to juggle, and literally that pressure of creating it there is many times where I've had like writer's block or design block, where it's just the pieces aren't fitting, and I don't solve it by spending more hours, because then I just get fatigued. I stop. I've learned this over
Yeah,
years.
I've learned that as well.
I've stopped and I go for a hike, or I live on a river, a little creek in my backyard. I go down to the creek and I just watch the water go. And my
Beautiful.
mind is kind of operating in the realm, but not on anything specific. And then just something drops in, and oh, that's how I do it, and boom, it's that quick.
Yeah.
Where is that source? You know, like I've thought about it, but I've done it, experienced it so many times, I don't question it anymore. It's just, it's like grace, like in a way, what you said. It just shows up, and it's part of the human experience. Grace, the way it was taught to me was from a Roman Catholic priest, and so it had that, the word grace had this kind of religious context a lot of times. But really, grace, the way it was explained to me and the way I've experienced it, is it's a similar attraction to gravity. It's just grace is operating in a non-physical environment, where gravity is in an environment of matter and physicality. So this attraction that's in non-physical attraction, what is that? And that's where maybe our point of view, our individual point of view comes in, because if you're oriented towards a god or gods or the divine, spiritual path, that's one orientation. Another is orientation to just nature, or to, a form of intelligence that's not physical. There isn't a kind of, the mind doesn't attach to it. It's just this all-encompassing intelligence that keeps order in chaos.
Yeah.
And that to me is where I feel most comfortable, is that I can't profess to say that I know where my source of awareness is coming from. and or nor that I have some alignment with any philosophy or, even yogic lineage. My lineage of yogis is innovators who've taken things from their teachers and created something unique. And that's what I've done with mine. And I don't know where it came from other than pain, which is breaking my back. That was the catalyst, let's say,
Yep.
for investigation of, okay, what is going to work in this moment? So I feel, I'm turning 70 next year. I'm feeling for the first time in my life that I'm content with where I'm at in my life. I could die tomorrow and feel like I've had a life well lived. And every day at this point is a gift. Every conversation I have with people like yourselves, both of you, is a gift. It's like food. It's like this beautiful opportunity to live with humans. I know there's this world coming where we're going to be living with more machines than humans, possibly. But this is the renaissance right now of living with humans. Can we, as human species, can we meet each other where we share things, we share ideas, no matter how different we are and how different we think, can we recognize where we're identical, where we're the same?
Peter, I want to
throw
share.
it. Oh,
Oh,
no,
go
you
ahead,
first, you
Krystal.
first. You first, you
Oh,
first.
I was just going to say, Peter, you look great, man. Gravity has been good to you.
It has been good to me. Yeah, it really has.
Go ahead, Krystal. Thank you.
I want to explore the idea of what does the inner teacher look like if this is a simulation? And have you entertained the idea that this could be a simulation?
Everything is a divine simulation, and it's all synonymous with consciousness. So when we say awareness, when we say presence, when we say spirit, when we say God, say gods, say the divine, nature, life itself, existence, these are all synonyms. These are all just different ways of as Peter was saying, like orienting ourselves toward the source, which for me, I always say the source is what is central, what's at the center point, the still point. And that's everywhere. That's in every pixel, every particle, every molecule, every cell, every stone, every drop of water, every cloud, every tree, every person, and shining through our eyes, pulsing in our heart, healing our wounds. Like it's everywhere, infinite, always at once. And it's overwhelming how beautiful it is. It's crushing how absolutely loving it is. It really melts and destroys everything when we get close to it because it's so immense. And so I think that we get it in doses so that we can handle it. When Krishna appears in the Bhagavad Gita in his universal form, in his Swarup, to his friend Arjuna falls crushed to the ground because he can't bear the totality of life. He can't bear the overwhelming weight of grace and power and love and mercy and terror and horror and just the cycles of everything. Being able to have that psychedelic vision, he crumbles and he says, please, 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 Krishna, return to the form that you were before as my friend. And like Peter was saying, just being around humans, just being around family, just being, around our dog, just being in nature. Like the universe is so kind, but we have to remember to request its kindness, because if we're really stubborn like I am, it'll beat us up with some very difficult lessons out of love for us. And, life can be a very rough road if we're not listening, not paying attention, if we're not humble enough to ask for guidance and help and, get therapy and support and healing and practice and, daily rituals and all the things that really help us with our mental health and our emotional well-being. Sometimes we can be very stoic, and there's a great strength in being stoic. There's some great qualities that come from that. But if we try to go alone too much, it could be pride that keeps us from really opening up to things being easier, to things
Yes.
being more gentle and more kind. And
Go
I
to
think,
therapy. I love that
Yeah.
you said that. Please
Yeah.
go to therapy, people. Therapy's good for you.
Got my,
So, and
my
if you don't
therapist on
go to
speed dial.
therapy, maybe life brings it to you. Like in my situation, my wife just got her degree in psychology
Oh,
from
wow.
Pacifica.
Nice.
And I've told many people that have asked, like, is she drawn to it? And I said, yeah. I mean, she's already saved, even before she got her degree, she saved 3 marriages before she even got her degree. And they kind of, really? And I go, yeah, our marriage 3 times,
Oh,
like
wow.
this kind of
Wow.
ability to hold space for
Yeah.
triggers, ability to hold space for these programs that were
Yeah.
operating subconsciously.
Stories. Yeah. And
So,
there's nothing more beautiful than relationship. There's nothing more challenging than relationship.
of course,
And
of
I think
course.
that's where the yoga is in relationship.
And the only thing that I would add to that, there's, growth in having a teenager.
Well, I'm dealing with my inner teenager for sure.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
dealing with a flesh and blood teenager, and it is by far the biggest challenge psychologically for me in my life. And it helps to have someone trained in the mapping of the psychological body, like Jung, through my wife, to really get a sense of what I'm looking at. Like, it took me, I mean, we're 5 years into her teenager phase, and it's taken me 5 years to really feel comfortable in it. And it wasn't in the beginning. It was the insanity, like literally thinking that there's something insane, and it wasn't. It was just development. It was just
Yeah.
a
Well,
teacher. It was divine. It was showing up for me in a way, and not happening to me, but for me.
well, that's the divine editor at play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, and we all edit in our own ways. I think like you, Nick, I'm still, well, you didn't say mothering, but I'm gonna make it in my way. Like, I'm still mothering the child within me, and I'm still dealing with my inner teenager and stuff. Like, I'm good, like I'm good with just I've had my hands full with the one I've got inside of me that I'm working with. Everyone has what I think we all choose our lives. Do you believe that? Like, before we get here, we choose what our challenges are going to be and how we're going to go through things?
It's a very deep question, and I don't have the answer to that, but I question it because I question it for myself. How much at choice am I? And how much are things playing out based on things that were set in motion before? It's a beautiful question to live inside of that question, to really wonder about it. Like, I think, taking responsibility for our choices, being accountable, like, that's definitely huge learning, maturing. But there's so much that happens to us in our life that is so far out of our control. And it's not, I think we can choose how we can react and get angry and upset and, throw a tantrum and make everything about everybody else and, get more divided, more anxious, more stressed, more contracted, or we can pause, respond, and see that this is an opportunity for me to grow, learn, heal, make better decisions. If I am making decisions, praying for grace to guide these decisions, because, a lot of these things happen they're like impulses, they're like, they're unconscious. It's like we see something, we get afraid, and then we go into fight or flight, and it's nature. And so I think the remedy that I've found, the one thing that has really helped me the most, aside from, music and therapy and yoga, is really just being still and developing that relationship with stillness where I can really be quiet and humble myself so I'm not being thought led, not being emotionally led, but really being grounded. And, Peter, you were mentioning the Catholic priest, and I grew up in the Catholic Church, and there's so much of this journey that has been so beautiful, bringing me back to Jesus's teachings and coming full circle in so many ways. And of course, I'm watching The Chosen, so that helps. I don't know if you guys have seen The Chosen.
Is that on Netflix?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. It's really good.
Okay, that's
My,
good
yeah,
to
my,
know.
my dad's watching right now. It's just so beautiful, man. Like, Jesus is such a yogi, and like those teachings, like the Buddha or like any of the great mystics or sages, they're so universal, they're so timeless.
Yeah.
Just coming back to humility and love and kindness and service and oh wow, like just thinking about it, it's just it floods me with gratitude. I have people in my life who are really struggling right now with life-threatening disease. People who are very close, near and dear to me, and there's so much that's out of my control.
Right.
There's so much that I want to do and things that I am doing, but there's so much that's beyond my ability. So I have to just go to God and pray and open myself up and just pray for, the Holy Spirit to really flood and rush my loved ones and come to their aid and support them and just sending them encouragement and messages and, visiting them and spending time with them. And it just really reminds us, me of like how absolutely precious life and time is, and how do I want to show up for people? How do I want to show up for myself? Because it's hard for me to show up for other people when I'm not really connecting and communing myself.
That is a huge one. Showing up for yourself. I grew up growing up Catholic. You show up for others first, and then
Yeah.
they don't really talk much about showing up for yourself. At least my upbringing, it wasn't about showing up for yourself at all. It was just sacrifice. It was that. I want to address your question a little bit too, Krystal. Do we choose? There are old yogic books that when I was living in India for a year, I would go to these libraries and try to find English translations so that I could understand the native languages and stuff. And that thing about choosing was in some of them. But the other one that it was curious to me was that we come into this world with a certain number of breaths. Okay? And so if you believe that literally, then maybe you get a little paranoid about, what number did I get?
Slow it down.
What am I going? But I started to realize that these translations into English and maybe are lacking some of the context, and that when I hear this idea that you choose your life, I think it's what you said, MC, about self-responsibility. Like, it really brings you into this relationship with, can you be responsible for every choice in life you make, even if it's the wrong?
No, I
Even,
can't.
well, it's
No,
like,
I'm being
I
funny,
know,
but
I like that.
but I feel like without God's counsel, without God's grace, without God's presence, I can't bear the burden and the weight because it's beyond what I can comprehend. Like the amount of things that need to occur just for us to exist at all
Right.
is so far. Like I feel like I kind of stumble into my ego when I think that I'm like manifesting and making choices and like, praying for this and then it happens and da da da. Like I really get like lost in my head and like I find myself that I'm struggling and I'm suffering because when I look at the decisions I've made so many horrible decisions, but there's so much goodness and healing that came out of those experiences and those processes. They were difficult.
Exactly.
They were hard. I suffered, but I learned so much. So like, would I make those types of decisions for myself? I don't know. It's so deep, that question. It's a great question. It's an amazing question. I want to really be inside that question because there's so much that's happening that's beyond my control. And if I think that I'm in control, that's generally when I start to create even more problems.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the point that I'm trying to make is there's this realization when we read something like this, the number of breaths in particular. When I read it, I realized that okay, it's ridiculous to think that we're bound to that, and that there maybe was another reason that expression was written originally and then translated into English incompletely. And when you think about, okay, logically, if I had a certain number of breaths, what would I do to maintain life, a vital life, as long as I can? And the answer came to me while I was recovering on my back injury. you'd slow your breath down. And ironically or miraculously, the research is in now that when you slow your breath down, all sorts of biological processes are supported and facilitated, and spiritual processes are supported. And so, in a way, this certain number of breaths phrase is basically code for a process of slowing your breath down, because there's something magic that happens when you slow your breath down. And this I've lived and experienced and understand that when I'm triggered as shit, deep breathing doesn't work, but slow breathing works.
Well, I think it slows our mind down as well, which
Totally.
is
So those and this choosing our parents or choosing this life, maybe it's code for something else. Like maybe it's code for, I haven't given as much thought to this expression, but maybe it's just giving you the strength to know that whatever is showing up in your life, you're capable of holding. Even if you don't need to act on it, but that you can hold it. And that gives me comfort. Like all the worst things that have ever happened to me in my life, some by my own choice, but some from outside my influence. Can I hold a space to feel into whatever it is that's happening? And that inspires me that, oh, if I take the time, I can hold space for the worst things. I've also, the last couple of years, we've had two close friends commit suicide 6 months apart.
Me too.
And it's just like the sweetest hearts and the intelligence that's their life experience. And
beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful
how can
soul.
that happen? But I don't know. I don't know how it happens, but I also know that I am grateful for their presence, as abbreviated as it was, for those presences in my life.
And I find that they're still present. And this, I love what you're saying, Peter. And my little sort of reflection on that is like when we talk about holding space, is let space hold you.
Yeah.
Because spirit has such a bigger capacity than we do. And sometimes our heart and our mind is very limited, and there's only so much that our body can handle and withstand. So when we open up to spirit, which again, that's the synonymous with conscious, with awareness. Awareness is the living spirit. The light shining through our eyes is the light of heaven. The light that is paying attention and seeing, the witness, the observer, has no judgment. It's just loving presence. It's just all being, all loving, all, ever present, omnidirectional, soaking and saturating and permeating all of existence, because all of existence is it. And so when I rest in that stillness, that quiet presence, I'm able to be with the pain, the suffering, the heartache, the confusion, the loss, the illusion, the ego, the pride, the complication, the stupidity, all my ignorance, all my arrogance, all my sort of bad deeds and like addiction. And like I can be with everything without judging it. And I can see that everyone else is suffering the same way I am. And then I can start to really deepen and develop this capacity to let spirit flow through me so that I can extend loving kindness to everyone in all directions at all times until I become permanently established in that. And until I'm permanently established in that, I am in the human condition, so I still need the remedy and the cure. So I need my dosage. And my dosage is just sitting every day, just to come, my touchstone, come back, take the medicine, be quiet, be still, slow down the breath. And just be patient with myself, because I'm human, I'm full of faults, I'm imperfect, I'm a mess.
MC, I'm going to tease you a little bit here, because you took the liberty of teasing me a little bit. Like, you're a rock star, man. And so let me get through this. You have a platform that reaches in one event thousands of people. And so that path that you're on, of course you need to replenish, because I've never had the problem of being a rock star. You are a rock star.
Peter, you got a rock star vibe. You got a rock star vibe.
Well,
He
the
does, right?
beautiful thing about my life, and maybe I'm lucky, is, like my following is like my huge audience of like 85 people on Instagram, you know, where yours is hundreds of thousands, you know. I I realize that my voice is an important voice in the whole conversation, and yet I don't have the burden of what you're working with, which I would think is this
The only burden
response.
the only burden that I'm working with is my mind. There's no other burden besides that.
Okay, well, good for you,
But
because
that's
there
it.
is a certain responsibility when you're in the public as a public figure.
But
There
that's
is,
all. That's all. It's all here. Like if I'm not here, then I'm lost here.
right,
And if I'm lost here, I'm lost everywhere.
right.
And all I can do is acknowledge that I am limited and that I am human and that I need support and help and whatever gets me back here.
Yeah, same.
So whatever gets me back here, it doesn't matter like how big your family is, doesn't matter how many followers, like none of that matters.
I know that.
Yeah, it only matters is how you get back here. And whatever gets you back here is, we could call it yoga, we could call it communion, prayer, forgiveness, redemption, healing, surrender, letting go. Um, it doesn't matter what you call it, it's just whatever brings you back. And life has a beautiful way of, beating you up. and
It's
and
so
yeah,
true.
yeah. And if you can take the beating and build a thick armor to it, or you can just let that final blow just strike you and just
Sure.
let it finish you, because
Yeah.
it's better to just get it over with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
finish you on a metaphorical sense, not
Yeah.
finish you on a physical
No,
plane.
not
Yeah,
about
like,
taking
whoa,
your
we
own
went dark
life.
real fast.
Right.
No, it's actually the brightest thing in my
It is.
in my
Same.
experience is to allow life to edit what I don't need to carry.
Yeah.
And I can cling to it and get dragged, the old Buddha saying, or you can let go. And either way, it's going to be taken from you. So it's your choice how you want to roll. Like, do you want to have gravity and grace, or do you want to struggle and suffer? And maybe that is, to answer your question on some level, Krystal, maybe that is the only choice we have, is because life is going to happen. There's so much that's out of our control. And, we're at choice. Do we want to suffer, or do we want to let go, heal, and come back to what's real?
Yeah, it's like the death card in tarot. It's like
Yeah.
it doesn't mean death. Like being beaten up by life and left to die is not necessarily the darkness, but it's the ending of a cycle, a death of the ego, so that you can experience that rebirth into something else. That's another conversation.
MC,
Transformation.
I know we're kind of squeezed on time here, Crystal, but I want to just mention something because I think it just came in just now.
Bring
You
it in,
said,
bring it in.
Yeah, and
really,
I have no time constraints, Peter. So
okay,
don't.
no, we do. We're
We
filming
do.
before I head to Europe at the end of the week. I loved what you said about, this burden of fame or burden of having a voice that's, at a level that you influence people, and that when you return to the center of yourself, that's the place that makes it possible. If you don't have that returning here to the heart space, it's just chaos. It is a burden. We, as Crystal and her husband Israel and I started to think about this platform, my mind is towards the creative, and I thought, okay, I need a logo, and so then this image of a labyrinth came to me, and then I started to do this research about labyrinth, and really the labyrinth, different than a maze, is about one decision to make, to turn inward. Once you're in, there's no choices to make. The labyrinth just
It takes
turns
you.
you, flips you over, takes you around the
Yes,
world a few
yes.
times, and then you end up in the center. And it is in many ways this perfect
That's
metaphor that
beautiful. Yeah.
if we're looking how to navigate the chaos of the world at the moment, the only decision you have to make is turn towards the center of yourself.
Yeah, and the chaos now is the chaos yesterday and the chaos tomorrow. It's the chaos that will always exist. It will never change. It's
Yeah,
always chaos.
Yeah.
So that's the nature of creation of the universe. There's always death and birth, and stars are exploding and expanding and being born, and things are dying. So it's always that. Um, Going to the center, being still, is always the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Thank you for being our guest. Like,
Oh, it's a blessing to be with you guys, man. I really enjoy. I really it's so great to connect with you, Peter, after all these years, man.
same.
And Krystal, it's so great to meet you, and I just would love to hear some of the music you're working on.
To be continued,
Yeah,
yes.
always, always.
But
Actually,
we'd love to have you back, part two.
yeah, would love to. And Peter, you're talking about platform, and I have to do some self promotion, man. Like, I just want to thank everybody out there. Thank you for following MC Yogi on Spotify and listening to the music, because it really is like my absolute joy, and the greatest blessing of my life is to be able to make music, and it's what I truly brings me happiness and peace and makes me feel calm and relaxed, and to be able to share that is just one of the greatest blessings on earth. So I just really, really want to thank everybody for listening on Spotify, and I just released a new meditation app, which I'm really excited about. So that's
We can post some of these things for you on our
that's really cool.
episode notes.
And the meditations are super psychedelic, man. They're like
Nice.
super, just kind of like artistic and creative, and
Take you on a magic carpet ride?
completely 100%. It's like it's like getting dosed. Like, you listen to the meditation and it's like, wow, it's beautiful. The energy is so beautiful. So it's all on mcyogi.com, and we just released that like a couple weeks ago. So I'm really excited about it.
Great. Well, this is perfect timing for you and for us. So thank you so much.
Thank you
Yes,
both.
thank
It was
you.
amazing. Thanks for spending time with me.
Ditto. That's it for this episode. Be well and stay open to the teacher within. If you've enjoyed our time together, follow or subscribe and stay tuned for upcoming chats you don't want to miss.